they would, especially in San Diego, we had a couple of downhills, and those crashes when they would happen, yeah, sometimes we kind of slow things down.
That
The,
makes
the
sense.
yeah, the two main tracks were Rancho San Diego and Lakeside, and Rancho was really really fast, well over 40 miles an hour for the older kids. Let's just say
Wow.
15 and older. I mean, yeah, it was really downhill and really 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 fast.
That's that's insane. I can't imagine the that is fast.
Yeah, like Olympic speed, Olympic
Yeah.
straightaway speed, easy.
Yeah. And for a an old school downhill dirt track, I would assume some more flat and relatively blown out corners. And then
But the turns had to be better, but they still weren't as tall as they are now. There was just a lot. There was also fewer jumps per straightaway. That's the biggest. That's the number one biggest difference between 70s and 80s era BMX racing compared to the last 20 years. There's way more jumps per straightaway, and that's one of the most defining things that you can tell about BMX racing from then and now.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode. Oh man, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's an honor to be on your podcast. Thank you very much for reaching out to me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. It's interesting because in the last I mean couple of years at the events that I've been at, we just haven't I just haven't crossed paths with you. And I remember my dad telling me maybe at this last Frogtown at the third one, maybe that he was talking to you, and I thought, oh man, I don't even know who that is. And he was really shocked that I didn't know who you were. But
I I just sort of know a lot of stuff about old school BMX racing. Um, I don't know everything, and I don't claim to. But people sort of reach out to me a lot if they're trying to figure something out from 70s era, 80s era. I do know some 90s era, even though I wasn't around the 90s very much. Um, but I don't know. I kind of have a servant's heart. I like to help people, and I also have a real thirst for knowledge. I've just always been that way since I was a child. So, I when it comes to finding out this old BMX stuff, because I mean, BMX racing is so dear to my heart, and all the people, and and all of what encompasses BMX racing. I'm always kind of digging and searching and striving, and sometimes I may ask a few too many questions, but it's always meant with my best intentions to be able to share and help.
that's awesome. Well, yeah, I really appreciate that because I have heard, and that's probably a great place to start the conversation, is that I have heard that you are the guy to go to when you have a question about a picture and who's in a photo. I have heard that Johnny Johnson is the guy to talk to.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know. It was probably 8, 10, maybe maybe a little bit longer, 10 years ago or longer. Um, People were starting to really post a lot of photos on Facebook and stuff like that, and I would always see people in the background, and I'm not like some um, computer photograph guru type guy. I just but I know my handful of tricks, so I'll go and scan and crop and blow up, and all of a sudden you see like 5 or 6 people in the background instead of just who's on the track. And I'm also really good at remembering like years with certain teams and the numbers on people's number plates and stuff like that. So
That's
mm,
really cool. Which I
yeah,
mean, which is a skill in and of itself. Like, I was talking with Dwayne Taylor recently about the like, Moto has lifetime numbers, and you can brand those numbers and stuff, and we do have the name of motocross brought into the mix of what we're doing. But personally, I've always kind of liked I could make an argument both ways, but I've always kind of liked the fact that each year you can earn a new number. And for me, those numbers have had so much significance in my life. And so I use those numbers in different things. Like, one of them is in an email, and then across like different places, I have them. And I use them as little, like, I'll call them like memory pieces that I just have of nostalgia. And so you talking about that, being able to remember, but even as you mentioned that, there's a lot more depth that goes into being able to remember what year was on somebody's bike and when, because those numbers are changing every single year.
that's right. I got like a really good example. Back in 1978, my first real year of racing, Stu Thompson ran both his local number, I should say his district number, and he also ran his pro number one number. But a lot of times he actually ran his district number, 27X. But the one thing I always know when I see it is when he ran his number one plate, it was a custom made number by his friend and competitor Dennis the Red Baron Dane. Made a very special custom number one, and there was no other number one that looked just like that one. So anytime I see that one, I go, "Oh, 1978."
Wow. That's awesome though. I didn't know
Yeah,
that. So was that for, and Dennis Dane making plates, was that for a period of time, or was that a one-time thing that he did for Stu?
he's just he has a artistic edge to him, and he made a number 8 for Greg Hill the same year. I believe he made one for I think Eric Roop. Not a whole lot of riders, but mainly like Stu and Greg, because those three they rode together and hung out together a lot back then.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. Did he have a brand for those plates, or were they just, or was it a whole plate, or was it a specific just number for the plate?
It was just a standard, either circular, or I should say oval or rectangular, Preston Petty number plate, which is basically the plain one. And
Gotcha.
he would just make these numbers, but you would know when you'd see it, you go, "Oh, that's just like at the same time period, Bob Harrow was doing his, except Bob was doing it, for a lot more people, and Dennis was only doing it for a few."
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to have a conversation with you, because you've got a lot of fascinating history about the sport. And one of the goals of this project is to not only get more riders on the track and more people on bikes in general, but also being able to create a little bit more of a bridge and a crossover between that old school and new school, because I think that there is a little bit of history and heritage that's missing, but also I think that it's so valuable and super cool that we can still know some of those early pros and founders of the sport, and be able to spend time with them and get to know them, and being able to hear stories like this, which is really neat. And so did you say 78 was the first year that you raced?
Yeah, I was going to races in 77, but for lack of a better way of saying it, I was kind of a fearful kid, and I went to the races for a good 6 months before I started racing. And
Wow.
my dad was the kind of guy that always had like a truck or a van. Eventually, he bought a bus, so he was always willing to take a bunch of people out to the races, and I would go along. And I mean, I'd ride my bike around the neighborhood all day long and stuff like that. But I was a fearful kid, and it took me a good 6 months before I actually got a helmet on and on the track and started doing laps. And finally, I started racing, and everything took off from there.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, and I saw that you had told me in a message that about your dad buying this bus. So if we can dive into that a little bit more, because you said your dad bought a bus with the intention of taking kids to races, which I mean, talk about a heart to bring kids into to connect people with bikes in general. That is super cool. So I'd love to talk more about that.
Well, my dad, his name is Al Johnson. He passed away about 10 years ago. He was born in 1924, so he lived through the Depression and all that. Um, but a year before I started racing in '77, my late grandmother, who lived in Grass Valley, California, northeastern California, had passed away and left us a small inheritance that we received near the end of 1980. And my dad had this idea. You could buy a used school bus from a school. So there's this area in East San Diego called Santee, and my dad went to the Santee School District and bought two buses that weren't being able to be used to transport kids for school, but they were still in great running condition. And my dad bought these two buses. I couldn't believe it. I have the receipt somewhere. $535 for two buses working.
Wow.
Yeah. So the plan was,
Like full-size school buses?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. It was a challenge just finding parking, in the neighborhood just to keep them. Um, anyway, basically, my dad went into this with the intention of us getting up, like, because most of the time in San Diego, yeah, we had like Wednesday night races and Friday night races, but mostly it was Sunday. And my dad and I would get up like around 5 in the morning, maybe even a little earlier, and we would go to about four locations and pick up kids. And sometimes we'd have as many as 35 kids with all the bikes, bungee cords on the top and inside, and all these kids. I mean, in a way, in 2024, it sounds like, a little bit dangerous and a bit of a insurance headache or whatever, for or liability headache or whatever. But sometimes you just do that kind of stuff because the idea was really to help the kids, get them out to the races. There wasn't like um, any kind of like a financial thing between my dad and the track. It wasn't nothing like that. It was just my dad wanting to help out kids. Because also my dad took early childhood development at San Diego City College, and so he was always a bit of like a counselor as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and
So
um, and then once I started racing, um, my dad within 6 months became a Burma official, and he was an official for pretty much that entire first run of me racing from 1978 to 1985.
wow. That's incredible. Okay, so um your dad, did he ever race himself?
My dad was actually well, he was actually much older. He was a good 20 years older than all of my friends' dads, but he didn't look it. He looked kind of youthful. But my dad was actually a oval dirt NASCAR racer, racing modified stock cars in Northern California at the old San Jose Speedway. And he did that from 1958 to 1968. And he also raced midget cars as well, which kind of, I don't know. I don't know that kind of racing very well, but I do know the modified stock cars that my dad was racing in the 1958-68 were a lot of 1930s and 40s cars that they would fix up and modify.
Okay. Wow. And then how did he get you into BMX, or what was that connection?
I was never tested, but I was probably what you would call it ADHD kid, attention deficit hyperactive disorder type of kid. Man, I was so hyper. So when I was about 6 or 7, um, my parents had divorced, lived in two different houses on opposite sides of the block. They were cordial but couldn't live with each other. But my dad, of course, would go to like the swap meet or whatever, and he was really still into cars, even though he wasn't racing anymore. And he'd have all these junk car parts in my mom's backyard. One day, I just go out there, just kind of, being a snooping little 7 or 8 year old kid, and there's a Schwinn Stingray used from the swap meet, and and uh and I didn't really ask. I just started riding it, and that was it. That was the catalyst to all of it. You probably
Wow.
like for $20.
That's really cool. Did you find out later? Was it supposed to be a surprise for you, or was it a collector item that he was intending to keep?
The words were never even spoken. I think it was
Really?
just like, well, there's a bike in the backyard, and hopefully Johnny will start riding it instead of terrorizing the neighborhood because he's such a hyper kid.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. That's pretty cool. Uh, man, and you grew up in, you said Southern California.
Yeah, I grew up in an area called Point Loma, which is a really nice place to live now, but it was a little more affordable when I lived there when I was little. But Point Loma is basically on the opposite side of the San Diego airport. So if you've
Okay.
ever flown into San Diego, we're literally on the opposite side, like where the airplanes take off goes right over the main street I lived off of.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I've got a friend who his grandma grew up there, and it probably would have been, I don't know, probably around the same time um that she was living there, probably around the same time that you guys were in that area. And so I remember as she sold her house and everything, her and her husband had bought it many years prior to that. And values had just gone up like crazy. And
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The house that I lived in was practically what do you call that when you're not supposed to live in a house anymore?
oh, like condemned?
Yeah, it was almost a condemned property, and now the person living there said something like the place is worth about 1.4 million or something like that now.
Wow. Just just
Yeah.
just barely different.
Yeah, we were living there for like something like $500 a month, maybe less.
Wow. That's
It was
crazy.
two bedroom, front yard, backyard, detached garage. I mean, with a little parking area for to go up to the garage, park your car. I mean, it's a decent little chunk of property. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, that was got out of there a long time ago.
Gotcha. Okay. So you were in that area, and so your dad went to the swap meet, got you or found a Stingray, and then you found it and got into riding. And then you said it took you about 6 months of actually going to the track before. So when your dad started taking kids to the track and just had this idea, was it just because he saw how much value it provided you, or was there more to that story?
That's a great question because I don't really know other than I mean, I know it's kind of a blanket statement, but he just liked to help kids. Uh,
Okay.
he's he's just that kind of guy. There wasn't a whole lot else. Um, because figure 76, 77, I'm starting to ride. Actually, it was around 75. I think I got that Stingray. Um, Christmas 76. Um, for Christmas, we went to the bike shop and got myself my first real new bike, and it was a bike that mostly people from France know because it was made by Peugeot, and it's not a popular brand in America. It was called a CPX 100, and so I get that, but I'm still not racing yet. I'm still mostly just riding around the neighborhood, and found a really cool jumping place. That it actually like a really miniature track, but with a couple of big jumps, and it was so much fun. Not far from where I live, but with that, I started meeting all these kids that had BMX bikes too. So all of a sudden, we got about 20, 30 kids, just in my like 3 mile radius of where I live. So we had plenty of people to take with us when before my dad got the buses. This is back when he was driving an old Corvair truck, which is a really, really, really cool old truck that I wish I had. Um, and and he had a mail truck as well. That we used that in 1980. This mail truck that he had was parked at the most popular spot for photographers at the 1980 NBA Super Nationals at Saddleback. There's like 30 photos of that I've seen of people, like all these famous racers going over this specific jump. Donnie Atherton, Ronnie Anderson, Eddie King, Scott Clark, Anthony Sewell, and there's my dad's mail truck right in the background. Like,
Whoa.
yeah, but the main part I'm trying to get to is when it comes to the bus, we had a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and then all of a sudden we start going to the races and we start meeting kids from like all different parts of San Diego. So, we went to about 4 locations and we packed that bus, man. Yeah, we definitely helped Moto Count.
That's so cool. Well, I mean, and it makes sense. Your comment earlier about him going to school for early childhood education and development is a desire to help kids. And in a, I mean, I think at any point in time, it's not that difficult. You don't have to look that far to find kids that need something to do, something to get their energy out, something to keep them busy. And even Mike Miranda and I were talking about that in the podcast that we did of like, keeping kids out of trouble, keeping kids off the, at the track, because if they're at the track, they're doing something, they're, focusing their energy, they're putting that into something. And so the same way that you're talking about your dad helping out, I think it just makes sense that he probably just saw that need. And my guess is that he saw the value that it added to your life and maybe to home life of it's easier to raise a kid who's got a little bit of energy out, because I can speak to that too. Like when we go racing and during the seasons when we don't have as much access to the track, it's significantly different. The kids have a lot more energy that's just pent up, and they need to get that out some way. And so being able to take those kids to the track is just absolutely cool.
And one other thing that we used to do, and I know it's an insurance issue now, but back then, my dad was always very willing for us to stay at the track after the very last main would finish. We would stay for an hour because everybody wanted to ride the track, and I don't see that anymore. I don't know if it's just insurance or if parents would just figure, well, we got you to the races, and we had a good day of racing. Now let's get out of here. But we used to hang out for a good hour every time we would go.
That's pretty cool. I love the dynamic of getting to race, of kids getting to race and being able to practice on the track for, an hour and a half beforehand, and then being able to race and then being able to practice afterwards. And that's something that my kids always look forward to is, and there, like you said, there aren't a lot of tracks that do that. It's, I would say from what I've seen, it's probably a 50-50 split. But from the parents' perspective, it's so advantageous to have them, even when it's a little bit later, like, nope, go out, go get some more energy out, keep going, keep riding. And for them, that's the reason that I don't take them to big races like nationals and even big state races, is because they want that concentrated lap after lap after lap of ride time. And so being able for your dad to be able to stick around, and I mean, what you're talking about your dad did, that's a big sacrifice of time on his part. And I don't know, did you guys have like bus stops that you had mapped out, or would he go to everybody's house?
Yeah, it was 4 different places. It's funny, I only remember one of them, and one of them was a bike shop on a major street in a part of San Diego called City Heights, and the bike shop was called Randall's El Cajon Boulevard Schwinn Bike and Sport. Couldn't be a whole lot longer, but there was a lot of riders out there, and we would pick up a lot of them there. That was probably our biggest stop, and it was right on El Cajon Boulevard. And El Cajon Boulevard is a huge. I think it's like a 10-mile long major street. Technically, it might be a highway, but
Okay.
Yeah, we would go there and a couple other places, but I'm not really sure exactly what the other ones were. I think we also used to go to this bike shop that was my first sponsor. and it was in the Midway district of San Diego, which is right near the what they called forever the sports arena. Now it's the sports arena is bought by a casino, so I don't know what it's called now. They changed the name. Anyway, Sutton Brothers Bike Shop on Midway Drive. That's where we would go and pick up all of the kids that lived in locally near me.
Oh, that's
In
awesome.
Point, yeah, in the Point Loma, Midway, Shelter Island, Ocean Beach, all that. They're all kind of close together. So we'd go meet up at that specific bike shop and drive everybody out to the races. It was fun.
That's neat.
And I'm so and the greatest thing about all of this is people still remember um, a kid that I didn't know that well named Tori Russell 2 nights ago sent me a photo of him and some kid. Oh, him and a kid that became a pretty well-known motocross guy in San Diego named Jeff Tilton. It's a photo of them from 1982, and there's my dad's bus in the background.
That's really cool.
This is just two
Wow.
days ago.
Wow.
And,
Do you
and
do you
I
still
was
see a bit of
I
those?
was just gonna say, and the one thing that he said that was really really cool is he says, you know, Johnny, when I think of BMX racing at that time, I think of things like your dad's bus getting kids to the races, and I think of your dad, and it was just a really really wonderful thing to hear.
Absolutely. I can see that. And I mean the impact that your dad made on those kids, and as people, we don't know the impact that you're making on a kid's life or even an adult's life. Like um it's an unknown, and you're just trying to do something that is going to benefit or help or encourage, whatever the case may be. And sometimes those little things um that we may see as small are some of the bigger things uh that are pivotal in our lives. And so I was actually curious, do you still see a few of those people that you remember riding the bus with?
Well, I'm in contact with a lot actually on Facebook.
That's
Um,
cool.
and sometimes there's people that because after a while you start to really think about it. We started using that bus in 81 and I quit summer of 85. So that's a good couple of years that we had people, you know, riding with us to races. So sometimes I forget and who everybody was that went with us. And like I said, this guy that just sent this photo, I knew his name, but I didn't know he rode the bus with us. And a handful of other people too. They send me photos. It's really cool. It's such a blessing, and I'm always really surprised the things that people say and remember, and they remember. Um, and it's something that I do now is I try to engage with people, not like in a corny way, but more like a genuine way. Just try to talk to people because, you know, sometimes like you figure if you're a kid and you go into a BMX race on a bus, maybe your parents don't have that much time for you, and maybe you know, socially you may need to be able to talk with somebody. So, you know, without really using the word engage, my dad would just kind of say, yeah, you know, go and make sure you go and talk to everybody and just let everybody feel welcome. And, you know, we'd bring a couple of gallons of this stuff called ERG, Gluconade, which eventually became Gatorade.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd bring a few gallons of
Wow.
that. So we had drinks. I don't remember how if we brought much food, but we definitely brought a lot of drinks, and it was just really good way to be able to help and be a part of making this really amazing sport accessible to some kids that weren't able to get to the races before.
Oh, kidding. Well, you also mentioned that your dad became, did you use the word counselor or something? But that would have been my assumption, is that he, in the period of time that he was taking these kids, is that it's for kids to be able to have somebody that they can trust, rely on, um, expect to be there, and to be able to talk to him. I would assume that your dad got to kind of play the role of dad to a lot of these kids
Yeah,
in at least a small way.
yeah. There are people that come up to me and tell me that my dad actually talked to them a lot more and gave them more time than I ever knew, and it really really helped them. And that's something that I do now, and it was something I never really thought would be a calling for me, but it is. And so I kind of have this. But then again, though, I don't have the schooling or anything like that. But I've always, especially this last 10 years, it's been very much like a counselor, kind of like a pastor, but without the title, and that's been a to me it's been a pretty obvious calling. So I like to be able to go and help. Sometimes people have a hard time though, because when you do that, you're putting yourself in a neutral position. So if something maybe kind of happens, you want to be there and try to be there to listen and understand and help. But sometimes people just, oh, but you have to be on my side only, and that's when it gets a little bit difficult. But if your heart's in the right place, you're able to be of help and of service and be a blessing to somebody.
Yeah. And I think that it's valuable at any point in time. The people that I've talked to that have known you and have had conversations with you is that um, they've all had great things to say about you and talked about the way that you are aware of the history of the sport and the way that you remember who they are. And so, conversations that happen, it's like people do notice that and take notice of that when you're talking to them, is that you're fully engaged in that conversation, which in some ways can be a lost art. People looking around, looking for other people, who's the better connection here, who's the better use of my time, and people have spoken very highly about your willingness to be one on one and have that conversation, and then also the knowledge that you have of the sport of BMX. And that was why, to begin with, that was why I wanted to have a conversation with you, because I thought, well, let's just talk about all things BMX. And being able to talk about the history of your dad just added on top of that, because it's so impactful for a major change in the sport. But anyway, back to the original comment, was just about how much you care for people and how much you have paid attention to people and the time that you directly give them. So everything that you've tried to accomplish, I believe that you are actively accomplishing.
Yeah, as long as I always just say, whatever you're doing, try to do it with honesty and sincerity. Don't, like, because the one thing people don't like is like that person that is always running up to you. Hey, how are you? Okay, bye. Where it just seems a bit insincere and rushed, and that doesn't really help anybody. Yeah, you can go say hi to even the most loneliest person can walk around a mall and somebody will say hi. You know,
Well,
it's
I think
different.
one of the hardest things that I struggle with, because I try to be really intentional about my time. I'm not always great about it. I'm not always as intentional about the conversation, because there are multiple things that happen. So sometimes I make mistakes in this, but I do try to have a conversation. And it's really easy. You come up to me and you say, "Hey Jay, hey Johnny, how's it going?" And immediately somebody can come up from the side and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And to be able to turn over to them, and it just distracts from this conversation. And even there are so many conversations where you'll have with somebody, where they'll look over to the right, and then, "Oh yeah, it's great. So you just got here? Oh cool, it's good to see you. We'll have to talk later." And then they turn back, but they missed what you were saying. They interrupted the conversation. There's a break in that relationship in some ways. And so being able for you to give people that intentionality of, "No, I'm here to talk to you right now,"
Yeah.
means a lot.
And I've actually learned, and it's one of those things in life that it's one of those skill sets in life where I've literally learned how, if an incident happens like that, I'm sitting there talking to somebody and somebody comes up, I will and I'll do it with the most kindest of intentions. I would say, hey, I'm in the middle of taking care of this with my friend right now. Please, let me talk to you in a few minutes. But when I was younger, man, I couldn't put that thought process together, and then to actually make that happen back then. As an adult, I mean, I just turned 56, so you learn some stuff through life.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, it's good for us to continue learning and be able to get some new things and new nuggets of wisdom along the way. And oh, one of the questions that I had for you is, as you were racing, what was the age that you were when your dad was running the bus?
He got the bus in early '81, I believe, and so I was 13. I have a January birthday, so I was 13. So 13, let's see, so 81, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 13, 14, 15, 16, till I was about 17 years old. We were using that bus going out to local races and certain nationals and Gold Cup races and all that. And on the West Coast, it's amazing. There was so much BMX going on in Southern California in that era. We didn't have to go to Arizona hardly at all for any races. I only went to Vegas a couple of times for the '82 World Championships and the '84 ABA Gold Cup. But up and down Southern California, there was a lot going on. And one thing I will tell you, and everybody's always a bit shocked when they learn this, um, in '77, especially '77, when I first started going out to the races, we had in San Diego County 10 running tracks.
Wow.
Yeah, 10. Unbelievable. But
That is a lot. Yeah.
gimmicks was really, really, really was really moving though at that time, and it was a new sport. We had a lot of there's a lot of one. It was also very affordable. There wasn't nearly as many things to do as there is now. But man, there was an awful lot of interest in BMX racing. And you go to a race on a Sunday, and races would start at 9 a.m. and you're leaving at dark.
Wow. That's wild. Is that just because of moto count, or things moving slower and enjoying the time, or?
Um, they would try to, they wouldn't run laps where you're like 50% through the track and then the gate drops again. They would, especially in San Diego, we had a couple of downhills, and those crashes when they would happen, yeah, sometimes it would kind of slow things down.
That
the,
makes
the
sense.
yeah, the two main tracks were Rancho San Diego and Lakeside, and Rancho was really, really fast, well over 40 miles an hour for the older kids. Let's just say
Wow.
15 and older. I mean, yeah, it was really downhill and really, really, really fast.
That's that's insane. I can't imagine the that is fast.
Yeah, like Olympic speed, Olympic
Yeah.
straightaway speed, easy.
Yeah. And for a an old school downhill dirt track, I would assume some more flat and relatively blown out corners. And then
the, the turns had to be better, but they still weren't as tall as they are now. There was just a lot. There was also fewer jumps per straightaway. That's the biggest. That's the number one biggest difference between '70s and '80s era BMX racing compared to the last 20 years. There's way more jumps per straightaway, and that's one of the most defining things that you can tell about BMX racing from then and now. Um, um, Also, I mean, even like I know a lot of the old school guys, they kind of complain about the paved berms and stuff like that. But man, we had paved berms in 1982.
really,
The first one I think that was the first one I think was in Miami, Florida for NBL race. Some big race,
really,
and everyone's freaking out like, what's this? It's a cement turn or an asphalt turn. why are they doing this? But then again, they forget it's Miami, and it rains, and when it rains, your track goes away. You go and meet any track operator. I mean, I remember last year around this time, Tyler Brown was like knee deep in water and mud trying to take care of San Diego BMX, um, which
Wow.
also used to be called Claremont BMX, which was also called Kearney Moto Park. That place has been running since '74, I think. It's second longest running track in America.
I did not know that. That is really cool. It's 1974. You said second longest?
Yeah,
What's the longest running track?
I know it, but I'm forgetting the name. All I, it's so funny because
I put you on the spot.
all I'm thinking of is huge doubles. This track had these huge doubles that ah, if it comes to me, I'll say it. I just can't remember right
That's
now.
okay. I'll trim this part. I'll trim this section of our interview apart, and then we'll put this clip into Facebook and Instagram, and we'll be able to get people's feedback, and if you can't remember, they'll remember for us. So
I think it's South Park,
okay.
Pittsburgh.
Wow. Well, you just mentioned that there were 10 tracks in the Southern California area.
Oh no, San
Oh,
Diego County.
oh, San Diego County. Okay.
Literally, like let's just say from Oceanside down to the Mexico border.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. And when I had a conversation with Mike Caruth, he was telling me that in his area growing up, there were like 12 tracks I think he said like a dozen tracks in a 12-mile radius or something.
Yeah, and these tracks are all running. And I have a list. I actually posted on Facebook a while ago. But yeah, it was amazing because I mean, there this real estate boom in land and all that kind of stuff was a whole different thing back then because there was just a ton of land available in San Diego, and we didn't have I mean, I don't know stuff like populations and stuff. I don't have no idea how many more people we have now than we did then, but there was a lot more open space.
Yeah,
So you find a couple of landowners that think, yeah, okay, we'll help out some kids.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So how long did your racing journey or racing career last? And then what did you move on to once you
Well,
got out of racing?
initially I raced from March '78 to summer 1985. There was a there was a new association that had started called USBA, and they had a national at a track that was built for only a couple of years behind what was called the Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego, which is where it was like the old stadium that had been there forever. Um, they had the Chargers practice field, and behind there they had a full blown BMX racing track for about 3 years. And summer of '85, that was my last race. Um, uh, Motocross superstar Jeremy McGrath was a young kid, and he tripled at that race.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and there was a lot of legendary racers there. I remember seeing Greg Hill, Tinker Juarez, and and Pete Lonkarovich, who was a pretty new pro at the time.
That's
And
pretty cool.
yeah, but that was my last race, summer of '85. I stopped, and I even though I love BMX and I love the people, I was just really burned out because I'd been racing nonstop since March of 1978. So that was it's quite a few years, about 7 years, and I just kind of needed something else and something new. And it was kind of funny. I was in high school, and I met these two guys. They were brothers, and they said, "Hey, we go out to this little underground nightclub in Spring Valley, which is East San Diego, and it's for teenagers under 21, but it's really cutting edge, and the music is really current, and it was kind of revolving around it was kind of the tail end of the new wave era. So and yeah, so like it's electronic music and synth pop and alternative rock too, and also the very beginnings of hip hop becoming very popular. And I started going, and I didn't like it at first, but all of a sudden, you go more and you start meeting some people and you make some friends. And I was already a musically inclined person. I play guitar, not very well, so so. And and anyway, I was going out there, and I met the owner, and I'm making friends, and then this opportunity came for me to become a DJ, and I was just kind of like, this has never crossed my path, my mind, I should say. I was really I wanted to be a really good guitar player. That was kind of my hobby, but man, it's really hard to become a really good guitar player. A little easier now with YouTube and great teachers, but all of a sudden this DJ thing fell in my lap, and I've been running with that for let's see, next month will be 38 years.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I did nightclubs for 28 straight years, and then this last 10 I did more like I do like some sporting events. Like now I'll do these some of these BMX events. I've been asked to do Frogtown this year. I've DJ'd the NBA reunion, which is usually somewhere in the Valley, northern LA. And I DJ'd the Saturday night party for the Saturday night 80s music party for Dirty Fest last year.
Oh, okay. That was you. Okay.
Yeah, the that Saturday night party where they're having pit bike races, and I gotta admit, I was just thinking, come on, man, pit bike races, how much fun could this really be? Man, it was so much better than I expected. They had
It
these guys
was.
like Barry Nilsson and Gary Laurent and all these guys, and they're going hard and fast, and it was crazy. And I'm like playing all this music, I'm like, and everybody's there, and it was outdoors in the dirt, which is kind of not really my thing when I'm DJing too much, being a couple $1,000s worth of DJ equipment. Dirt and dust isn't exactly your best friend. But then again, I'm around all these people that I'm really, really happy to see, and I'm just playing all this 80s, random 80s music from hip hop and new wave and rock and metal and all this kind of stuff, just trying to make it fun and interesting and memorable. And the racing itself was just insane, and I was really happy to be there.
It was a fun night. Like I mean, I remember having a good time, got to hang out with some friends and got to race. And I think I made it to the semi of the pit bike race. And I kind of felt the same way. Like my dad had signed me up. He's like, yeah, we're gonna go race. And I was like, all right, we'll do this. So we went up and I made it to the semi, and I got to that point, and it just wasn't worth it to me. Like you come down that big tunnel, and there was that big 180-degree flat on gravel turn, and I was so disappointed when we were up at the top, and Miranda had the ball. You know what they used it for, but for picking gates.
Oh yeah.
The ping pong balls.
Yeah.
And so I I ended up getting gate 1, and I was so disappointed because I did not want the inside, because right next to me was like Jason Morris and Alan Foster, and there were some gnarly dudes that were far faster than me, and I just thought it is not worth not racing tomorrow. I am not I'm not gonna put it all out there just for a pit bike race. And I mean, I had a great time, but it was definitely one moment where I self-identified as like, I'm gonna back out of this one.
Yeah. I got to tell you, from my vantage point, because I was right by that big U-turn last turn, right before the finish. I was set up right behind it, and
Oh,
I don't know who this kid was, but there was this girl that was really, really fast, and she was hanging with all these fast guys, and someone took her out, and took her out in that turn, and it was
yeah.
right in front of me, and I had all these people all around me, like Brian Gass and Justin Shepard, and all these people are standing there, and we're just like, wow, that little girl is like beating everybody and hanging with all these fast guys. And all of a sudden, I don't know who it was, but someone took her out. I couldn't believe it. Like rode her right up into the turn. She like hit there was like a post that was that had like a banner for Dirty Fest, and she like took the whole thing out, and
Oh
she got
wow.
right up and finished anyway, and everybody's like clapping. It was so much fun.
Was that the younger girl? Like I think she was like preteen age, and there yeah. So there she was racing with the boys, and anyway, I remember she got pushed over the edge, and I think Mike like gave her a prize anyway. He was like, "You've earned this."
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
cool.
it was a lot of fun. It was
That
just a
was.
lot of fun to be there. Um, I mean, BMX racing has never been played out. It's such a fun and entertaining sport, and you go and you make all these friends, and of course you want to go out there and compete, and you want to do well, of course. But an event like that, I'm looking around and I'm seeing people that I've known for 30, 40 years, and it was really really cool, really cool. I remember my a guy I raced against a little bit, Carl Butler, who rode for JMC. I had talked to him. I said, "Hey, come out to this. It's really fun because he's just sometimes like when you are away from everything, you kind of forget how many friends you got, or you kind of forget how much fun it was." And so he shows up and he's like, "Oh man, why did I even consider not being here? This is so much fun. It's so good to see everybody and to watch everybody racing." And you know, he's probably even thinking about wanting to get back into racing a tiny bit too, which is it happens to all of us. We all get that bug, just like, oh, I think I might want to start racing again. And some people do, and they really run with it, and some people not so much.
Yeah.
I've only been on a track once in the last 10 years or so, and I want to do it more. It just hasn't worked out that way for me.
Gotcha. Well, when you ended up getting, so when you finished up your time in racing, you would have been what, around
Right
19,
around
20?
18. Right around 17 and a half, 18, something like
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay. So you finished that up. Was your dad still running the bus up until that point?
Y- You know, one thing my dad started doing was outside of BMX, he became friends with because he knew some of these bike shop owners and stuff like that. Um, they started saying, "Hey, we have these long distance road rides in Mexico." One was called the Tecate Ensenada, which was a huge ride. You have thousands of people on road bikes, what they called 10 speeds back in the day. But they'd have all these people show up, and they needed to get from, like, let's say like San Diego people specifically would need to get to the start, be dropped off, ride the whole ride. I don't even remember how long it was, like 75 miles maybe, I'm guessing. I'm not sure.
Okay.
They'd get down to Ensenada, and of course there'd be a big party afterward. But when they were done, they'd all need to come back to San Diego. So these bike shop owners are telling my dad, "Hey, there are people that need a service, like a shuttle service." So my dad used that bus, and he did it once. And I remember we had two BMX Hall of Fame guys come with that were that one. I don't know if they were on road bikes or I think they called them F1s, which were like these sort of drafting kind of bikes. I don't
Okay.
not my thing. Anyway, but they came along, and I'm like, wow, like, this is something else, and it's a lot more adults than kids, obviously, but it was still really cool. And my dad's like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna do this a couple times a year." And it got to the point where he was doing about 3 different rides a year, and he started having to rent extra trailers and extra like vans and extra drivers. And he wound up he'd go down there, he'd make like five, six, $7,000 in a day, easy.
Wow.
Just a shuttle, basically a shuttle service for people on bikes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he
That's
did that. He did that till about 9. He did that for about 6 years, and then it was just it was kind of over it. Got to understand, my dad was much older. My dad was born in 1924, so figure 1991. He was already in his 60s, I think.
Yeah, 20. I mean, yeah, he would almost be 70 at that
See?
point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there is and he was already retired. And also another thing I didn't mention, from his auto racing back in the late 60s, he had crashed in a midget race car, and so he had a spinal problem, which was some a bit of a hindrance for him. He actually lived mostly off of just his military retirement, because he actually flew a little bit. Well, he was in the U.S. Army Air Corps, which was what the Air Force was called originally. And then and my dad actually flew a tiny bit in World War II, but not in combat. And by the end of World War II, they changed the name. So
Okay.
my dad had military pension coming in too. So even though it wasn't a whole lot, we were always pretty good at living pretty frugal.
Wow. That's really cool though. And then was it hard for him when you stopped racing, or was it kind of a natural progression? He kind of knew that was coming.
He knew that. I think he knew that even though I love BMX, that I needed to do something else for a while. So the DJ thing, he was very encouraging. He just said, "Hey, just don't get caught up in all this rock and roll lifestyle. Don't go getting in, super drunk and getting, and into drugs and all the women and all that kind of stuff." I said, just do your best, date one girl at a time, and and just don't go getting all wasted, and but I used my BMX like training, because I was very much like, I would do all kinds of training stuff for BMX. I'd do gates, I'd do sprints, I'd go on road rides, go on trail rides, and of course race. And I treated DJing the same way. There's a lot of stuff that people don't know about DJs. There's a lot of the preparation stuff and practice and all that kind of stuff that you don't really see all that much. But so I dove into that, and I dove into the DJ thing wholeheartedly, and it happened really fast. And but as far as my dad being, at least for the first 5 years I quit, he was doing those road rides in Mexico.
Gotcha.
So after 91 ish, yeah, it's a good question. But then again, he's also, around 70. So it's not like he had a ton of energy to go out all the time and do stuff. Once in a while, he even drop by a nightclub I would DJ at, just to say hi. And of course, all the pretty girls come running up to him thinking he's the owner.
Uh, yeah, that's cool though. I love hearing that, because it's obviously he invested a whole lot into you riding BMX, and he invested a lot into the sport of BMX, as just within the neighborhoods that you were a part of and the neighborhoods that he picked kids up in. And he cared a lot about the younger generation, which is really cool. But obviously, as you know, some of the things that can take away from the value of the sport, and of the sport being something that's a fun builder, is just the parents that get too involved in their kids and being there, and oh, we've put so much money into you racing at this point, and we've done this much, and we can't have you quit. And it's always a tough expectation to put on kids, because they don't know, they haven't known any different. And so it's really cool to hear that your dad, as invested as he was, it wasn't like it crushed him when you decided to step away from the sport.
Yeah. One thing I'll definitely tell you is, um, I was never both he and I never interested in chasing points, but I did wind up getting a couple of single digit numbers in my district in the NBA, which was our San Diego original. Well, actually, man, we had three associations running through San Diego at different time periods: BMXA of San Diego, NBA National Bicycle Association, and ABA. But I never chased points, but I still wound up doing really well. My dad never pressured me into any of that kind of stuff. The only things that he ever it really instilled in me is is um like don't be like boisterous and a loudmouth. Don't be unprofessional. Don't take people out in turns. Like don't go intentionally crashing people, and treat people the way you want to be treated. And I'll be honest with you, man. It kind of bothers me how but I saw it back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. There is always that those people that come out, and I mean, who knows why they say or do the things they do, but um it's just really good to treat people well. And you go out there to race, of course, and sometimes, yeah, some people crash and some people get a little bit mad or whatever. But man, I mean, it's BMX racing. There'll be another race, and we're racing. It's technically it's a youth sport, so make it fun for the kids. And don't go setting a bad example with a bunch of parents arguing and fighting and cursing and also getting all wasted at the track too.
Yeah. Yeah, because the kids are there to have a good time. And I think that there's a level, there's a line between kids having fun, and then moving from kids having fun into kids competing. And there's a shift. And I think when the shift comes from the kid, because I've seen this in kids at our local tracks and tracks that I've traveled around to, is that there's that line, and when that line is created by the parents is very different than when the line is created by the kids. And when the competition is advocated and propelled by the parents to make sure that their kid is competing at the top level, it's very different than when the kid goes, I want to push this and take this to the next level. Because one is just doing it to earn your love and your support and your respect as you're my parent and I want to please you, versus I want to do this, and then the parent coming alongside and supporting their kid.
Yeah. And you never really know exactly what people's motives are for doing what they do. I mean, it could be insecurity, it could be just wanting fame and notoriety and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because I remember when I was like around 12, 13, especially when I was 12, man, everybody wanted to be sponsored either by Diamondback or wanted to be sponsored by GT or Redline. You wanted it, or Mongoose. Mongoose was like the first really super, super team that I had ever seen. And, but you kind of never know exactly what people are doing, why they're doing what they're doing. Like for me, I really just wanted to go out there and race and have fun and hopefully make top three. You know, just do the best that I possibly can. But I always wanted to be friends with all these people that I'm racing against. I didn't want to be like so overly committed to just me winning that all these people that I'm racing against, I'm not friends with. I mean, I didn't understand that. And actually, a really interesting photo showed up a couple days ago. Um, on my feed on Facebook, and it's of four of the top. I think they were maybe 11 years old at the time. From the photos from 80, 80, 81, maybe 82, and it's of Mark Perez that rode for GT, Jason Jensen that rode for Torker, who was a legend at 10, um, and Eddie Sigmund from Texas, and who was the other one? Oh, Troy Ratz from I forgot where Troy's from, but he rode for when Huffy was actually trying to make a really big impression in racing, so they picked up some really fast guys, and he was one of them. And anyway, it's this photo of those four kids, and they're all about 11 years old, and they're just sitting there all talking, and it's just this photo. They're sitting on their bikes, got the uniforms on, their helmets off, and they're all talking. And I'm like, that's that's camaraderie against people that you're racing against. It's not like you're supposed to be enemies with everybody you race. Come on, man.
No,
Some,
that was my favorite part about it as I got older and I started reflecting on it is my best friends were the same people on my gate and the same people that we would be, trash talking in the shoots, and it was always in jest. It was never serious, and it was always trash talking there. And then we'd be on the track, and then once we were done, we would hang out at each other's vehicles, and we'd be hanging out. And I mean, we were 9, 10 years old, and then we'd go over to each other's houses for barbecues and to stay the night. And it was super fun being able to do that. And as I got older, it made me realize that there are not a lot of sports where you're best friends with the people that you're competing with the most. And like I remember standing, have this vivid memory of standing in the chutes at my first home track because at one point, I think when I was 9 years old or something, the track got torn down and somebody came in, wanted to, there was this old building in the middle of the property, and that's what we used as like the trophy room and registration booth. And then there was the track, and somebody came in, they wanted to buy the property and they wanted to build or develop something. Well, everything was going through, the track got torn down, the building got torn down. As soon as everything got torn down, they backed out of the deal. And it sat,
oh,
oh, it was so frustrating. It sat vacant for like 20 years. um just frustrating because because we could have had so many more memories there. But anyway, so it was my original home track, and I have this vivid memory of standing and staging, and I'm joking around and kept saying the age old joke of eat my dust. And one of my friends, he knew, and he was a little bit slower. He wasn't that much slower, but he was always just the guy having a great time on his bike. And he knew that we were a little bit faster than us, or than he was. And he goes, "Nah, by the time I get to you, your dust will have fallen on the ground. I'm not going to be eating anybody's dust." And it was fun. And then in that same moto, we were going around the track and we were talking to each other the whole time. And it wasn't, none of our parents were pushing us to treat it like we were going to make this a career. We were just going out there to have fun on our bikes, and that's exactly what we did. And those are some of my most fond memories of riding my bike.
I remember very clearly when I was about 11, 12, we would cross the finish line. It could be a lot of times back then it was 6-man gates, not 8-man gates, but
Okay.
we'd finish and we would all stop and talk about that lap for 15 minutes. I don't know if I've ever seen that at a race the last 20 years. We're
which
like,
is
oh,
which is one of my favorite things about going to um has been about going to Dirty Fest in Frogtown, is that that's kind of the culture has become, or it feels like more of the culture there, because you're bringing in the old school style of racing. And it's like as soon as you get done, you're turning around and you're hanging out and you're talking to people. And I will say, one of the biggest things that I'm conflicted, because at those I love racing, but when you're racing too much, then you have to drop your bike and go grab the next bike and run up to the top of the hill again. And so you don't have that time. So I'm conflicted between, well, I want to be able to spectate and I also want to be able to hang out and talk, but I also want to race. And you can't do
yeah,
all three.
yeah, that was such a fun event. Because I went back, I didn't actually catch the Saturday racing, but I was there all day Sunday, and it was so much fun. And the crowd was really into it too, which really helped a lot too. Um, you could it was a very, very interesting and very unique vibe that you don't catch the same at being at like a modern day BMX racing event. I mean, they're still both BMX racing, and yeah, it's still people, and we're still basically doing the same thing, but um, it's just that mindset, and it's just so much fun. It is really, really fun, and you know, like there's times when I would sit there and I would watch like this lap, and there's guys like Glenn Pavlovsky that hadn't been on a racing bike in like since about the mid to late 80s, and he comes out there and he's winning almost every lap, and then guys like Jason Richardson and Dale Holmes, who had raced each other vigorously for years and years and years, and all of a sudden here they are racing each other again, trading wins back and forth, um, and then you see, of course, you go out there and you see, and this is the best part though, is I don't know if you got to see this. I only saw it on video because I missed the lap, but the one where they had like kind of like the secret inside berm on the second to last berm, and there's Jason Richardson, who was, I think, 5 when Stu was 23.
Okay.
When they were much younger, and Stu and they come together into this, and Stu just does this jump and lands on the inside of this turn, and nobody expected it, and there's just this gigantic gasp of everybody. Whoa, I can't believe what I just saw. And even Jason's like, whoa, like what is this? It was, stuff like that. You don't really see as much of this kind of stuff, once in a while. Like what was his name, the guy that you said you raced against from SE?
Oh, Jason Morris.
Yeah, Jason Morris. Like sometimes I remember I saw a video of him jump these pretty much unjumpable triples in Vegas a couple of years ago, where nobody saw it coming, and all of a sudden he's like 12 feet in the air, clearing these unjumpable triples, stuff like that. It really makes BMX fun.
It does.
How this have you ever heard of the San Diego Velodrome? Do you know what that is? You know what a
Velodrome? I'm familiar with the Velodrome, but not the San Diego one.
Okay, well, in '79, NBA built a track there, and they had the '79 Shimano US Nationals there for BMX, and the track lasted till about early '82, but at the end of the track there was this S turn, and you'd never see S turns in BMX racing anymore, and you would go into it hard right, and then straight for about a foot, and then all of a sudden hard left, then 30 feet and you're at the finish line. So I mean, it was kind of a decision maker, and so this is a big national. There's all these great racers, and everybody's doing their thing, and then all of a sudden the pro class comes, and Stanley Robinson, who was a pro for Mongoose, he goes in. Instead of going like this, he jumps and clears all of it and lands on the other side about 15 feet from the finish line. So technically he kind of cut the track, but he was like 10 feet in the air, and nobody saw it, and nobody expected it, but of course everybody's talking about it. These kind of things that happen at these, especially at the old BMX races, man. It's amazing when you have these things happen and they turn into these memorable, legendary moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, and I mean, to be fair, if you're out there having a good time, that's the kind of race that's just like, it's worth the DQ because because you just had a good time and it's a memorable moment. And I mean, very similar. You mentioned Jason Morrison. He's someone who just recently, when I interviewed him, and his episode was the last one to go live, and we were having a conversation, and he said that was the reason that changed racing for him, is that it went from all competition to, I want to get my line the way that I want it to be. And then at the end of the race, however I come across the finish line, I'm happy with it if I got the lines that I wanted. And so talking about him jumping an unjumpable triple, there was at the Grands this last year, he was taking the pro line. He was so far ahead of the rest of our class. And I got to race with him on, I don't know, it was probably would have been 4 or 5 gates over the weekend. And it was really fun, but he was so far ahead of everybody else. And everybody would come out of, even in the main, everybody came out of the first corner everyone's bunched up except for Jason's like, I don't know, 5 bike lengths ahead of everybody. And he's jumping the pro line, huge air, not just scrubbing like everybody else, but he is in the air and he's just having a really good time. And you can tell. And he's fighting all the way to the end, but he's quite a ways ahead of everybody and just had, I mean, he had a solid race for him. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, and here's another good example of that too is so you figure right now there's a lot of really good racers that are over 40 years old. But 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was not like that at all. And I remember Stu Thompson, who would come out to the he would come out and race the grands and maybe the fall nationals, and he was like the most one of the most celebrated and recognized pro BMX racers in the whole history of the sport. So he would show up 45 years old, races 2 big races a year, goes to the grands and racing, because I don't remember if he was racing vet pro or if he had classified down to amateur because he was only racing twice a year. But he would go and jump the pro section at 45 years old, and nobody was wanting to jump the pro section that in his class, and they just go, oh man, that guy, because he would always, he always figured, I'm here, and it's not like he's got some big crazy ego thing going on, but he knows eyes are on him, so he'll go and do something like that to make it fun and
That's
memorable.
really cool. That's fun to hear. I mean, I've enjoyed getting to watch him race, and I mean, a lot of those old school guys, it doesn't look like they've missed much of a beat at all. Like they're still out on the track, they're still elbow to elbow and fighting for that, and it's fun to watch. It's a really good time. So
Yeah, it really is fun to see those guys. I mean, Greg Hill doesn't race much, but man, the last 5 times that he raced, he won pretty much every lap. It's been a while though since that last. Man, I don't even remember what that last race was. I think it was in Vegas about maybe 7 years ago. Um, but yeah, it's great when you see those old school champions come out and and just go, hey, I can still do this really well.
yeah, absolutely. So one of the last questions that I have for you is because of your history, and obviously you watched your dad invest in kids racing as he was a parent when you were a kid, and invest in all of you. What is it that you see? What are some of the values that you see that BMX adds to kids being on bikes? And it could be, whether they're racing or they're just riding around the streets, but what is the value that bikes add to kids' lives?
Health, fitness, freedom, um, also being able to kind of navigate through. You navigate through things on your bike that you also learn how to kind of navigate through life. Um, it's funny because this is just kind of coming to me because I've never really thought about this or really said it before, but yeah, I don't know, like you go and you hop on your bike and you're riding down the street and of course you gotta be peripheral vision, mindful of everything around you. That's a life trait as well. You know, because maybe the best friend you ever had could be right near you and you don't know it, or also your worst enemy, unfortunately. But um, um, also things like if you're on a bike, you most of the time you learn how to work on your bike. So all of a sudden you start learning these things that can help you in your life as well. I mean, I'm definitely not a car mechanic, so I gotta get my car taken to an auto shop if that's going to be done. But most anything else, if I work on something, it came from me initially tinkering with my bike so much. Um,
That's
but
really cool.
but especially the way that you learn how to um, navigate your life through dealing with people. that is a really, really, really amazing skill that I mean, I've got a 16-year-old daughter named Lauren, and I always tell her it's really important to engage, like verbally, face to face, eye to eye, than it is to always be, on your laptop or on your phone. Sure, those things have their place, and I'm not at all bashing new technology, but new technology is a tool. It's not the end all because if electricity shuts off, we got to talk to each other.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on so many key things right there. And I I would agree with you in all those things that you said, but then I think that if we really built out an extensive list, I think you could just go on and on with things that are added, and some things that other sports can contribute as well. But just the level, there are things that you gain from BMX as a whole that you don't get from other sports and other activities. And that's why I've just fallen in love with watching my kids be on their bikes, watching my kids be at the track, learning how to compete, learning how to win, learning how to lose. And they're all incredibly valuable skills.
I was just talking to this gentleman last night about the freedom that we had as kids, from my generation that they don't have nowadays because there's a lot of fear. Unfortunately, there is some very, very dark behaviors that have become a lot more relevant over the last 20, 30 years that weren't quite as as almost normalized as they are now. But the reason why I'm saying this is my dad back in the day, like when I was 12, maybe 13, I rode from my neighborhood in Point Loma, which is by the airport. I would rode all the way 35 miles up to Kiyomi Waller's house. And Kiyomi was he wound up actually winning a couple of Vet Pro titles and Pro Cruiser titles and all that. And he was one of my best friends. I'd known him since he was novice, and he's still one of my dearest friends. But I remember my dad let me ride that way. He just and this is so funny because this is before cell phones and we had pay phones around. So my dad gave me about $5 worth of dimes, and he said, just call me about every 45 minutes from a payphone. So
That's incredible.
yeah, so I mean, can you imagine right now? I mean, how old are your kids?
5 and 7.
Okay, so it's going to be a good 5 years before the one turns 12. But imagine letting your 12 or 13-year-old ride their bike 35 miles without a cell phone and
That's
just a pocket full of dimes.
it's, I mean, I love the level of independence, and independence actually is something that I also feel like bikes treat kids on a different level, is that there's no team to rely on. There's no, dynamic where there's like not really that fallback dynamic. You have to have some self-awareness and self-discipline, and you have to be able to take care of yourself to some extent. But no, I think that's so cool. Even in the episode that I did with Mike Miranda, he talked about the race that he was at, and I believe it was the first race, and he went around for the first and second motos, and he would like see his dad and smile, and he was in the back of on the in the back of the group. And anyway, he came around for the third moto, came around, and his dad was gone. And so afterwards, he realized that his dad had left, and he went and rode back like 8 miles, 12 miles, something like that, to home. And he asked his dad where he left, and his dad said, "You weren't any good. I left." It wasn't fun to watch.
Mm,
And he said
wow.
Mike Miranda loved it. He knew his dad well enough, and he knew like he was close enough. And he talked about his dad. It was his dad's way of motivating him. It's funny because I hear that story, and at first I was like, "Oh man," but he goes, "There's no animosity. It wasn't anything like." His dad just goes, "No, I had to go," and it motivated Mike to get to that next level and to push himself.
Wow.
But even so, in the same way, you talked about riding that 35 miles, and Mike talked about riding home, and it's just a level of independence that is few and far between now. And so anyway, that's a cool story.
You know, it's interesting too. It doesn't exactly fall in line with this, but it does have to do with me and my dad. Um, when I was 13, they had this gigantic race at that downhill Rancho San Diego, and it was August 1981. I was 13 expert, and man, I show up, and all the best guys showed up. I mean, all the best guys showed up, and at the end of the day, I couldn't believe it. I doubled. I won my 13X and my Open, and I couldn't believe it. It was, you know, sure you could say, yeah, home track advantage, but still, I'm racing against world class guys, and one of them was a wire to wire win. The other one was I came from behind, and but this was a really interesting part, and I'm probably going to post it on Facebook just because I want to see what people's reactions are. I remember winning that race, and I'm thinking, I can't believe it. I doubled at a national. Like, and then I was on a Diamondback, and at that time, Diamondback was gigantic. They were really huge in BMX racing, and I knew the team manager. I knew a couple of the factory team riders. The team manager comes up to me, and he comes up to me with some of the actual owners of the Diamondback was made in Japan, but all of their business dealings were through a distributor in northern LA County. So he comes up. His name is Sandy Finkelman. He came up with these two guys, Mitchell Weiner and Mike Bobrick, and these are like the main guys. This is the epicenter of Diamondback, and they come up to me and they're like, "Hey, congratulations! Wow, you're on one of our bikes, and congratulations!" And no offer of a sponsorship or anything like that. But I remember, yeah, that was really cool, and I'm just kind of walking around, and my buddy's like, "Wow, I can't believe you won!" And for some reason, it didn't have that thing that I was expecting winning a big national. And the payoff for me was how happy it made my dad.
Really?
Yes. I was very, very surprised because, man, let's just say it was hard to win, really hard to win a national back then. And my class was deep in talent. There was like 20 guys that could win a national at any time.
Wow.
And I wound up winning this one. And I'm just kind of thinking, well, it wasn't like a deflated moment, but it was more like, I'm like, wow, well, I did it. And it was legit. But my dad was the one that was the happiest.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's still fun because I think for individuals, they have call it their point of purpose or whatever it is. Like that for you was more meaningful than winning it for yourself. And just seeing the excitement or the smile or whatever it is on his face, like that had so much depth and meaning to it, which is really cool in and of itself. So
Yeah. I
love that.
it took me a while to figure it out though, because in the moment I was just kind of like, it feels like there's something missing. But then I see my dad, and I'm like, man, he sure is happy. And
That's
so
fun.
that was a good thing. But later on, obviously, as you become older and you start to kind of, hindsight is 2020, you have this clarity on your life and all this stuff. All of a sudden it just came to me. I'm like, man, because my daughter and I, her mom and I split when she was 5, and we haven't lived together since she was 5. But I've always, since, with very real sincerity, prayed that my daughter and I would always have a very, very connected relationship, and we do. And so I see that now. I see it from my dad's eyes. I can see it with me and my daughter. I mean, but mostly she wants to be a doctor. So more than anything, I can listen to her and I can encourage her, and and um, and just be happy for how she is and who she is, because she's a good kid. and polite, respectful, smart, and surprises me because, man, she's a lot smarter than I ever was when I was 6. Good Lord.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter really. My kids are at a different stage of life than your daughter is, but being able to look forward to the day when your kids can stand on your shoulders and be smarter and better and better in every way than we are, and to be able to hope for and encourage and pursue that, and trying to help them and be there, but then to be super excited for them when they get to that point. um so I mean, I already see elements and aspects of that with my kids, of them being smarter than me, and it makes me really excited. So
And yeah, I mean, man, like, she just hammers down on stuff like biology, and it's just like, wow, like, I'm you know I say this with all humility. I'm a pretty smart guy, but not like my daughter. Yeah, she knows some. She's very very good with her schoolwork, and I always try to um remind her that it's important to be well balanced. So, have a little bit of art in your life. Have learn how to be able to socialize with people. Learn how to be able to communicate, stuff like that. Because it's if you lean way too much into one thing, it can be difficult uh, to navigate through life. I mean, like when I first started DJing at 18, man, I mean, I was all into just the music and be able to go up there and play music and make it happen. And I had zero business skills, and it was man, it was a real problem for me. Learning how just even to spend money frugally and do my taxes and all that kind of stuff. It took a while
I get that. Yeah.
because that was definitely not. When it comes to things like that was something I'd never dealt with before, taxes and stuff like that, and just having money, you
Yeah.
know, because like I said, my dad had that spinal injury, so when I started DJing, all of a sudden I'm starting to make some money. So I'm also buying groceries and replacing furniture that had been 50 years old, and I'm buying some clothes for me and for my dad and for my mom. So you know
Yeah.
uh, life is a very very interesting journey if you keep your eyes open and try to go in with as much of a clear conscience and an open heart as you can, to be able not just to help yourself but to help others too, especially your folks, and or people that are your friends that are like family as well.
Yeah. I agree. All right. So earlier I did say it was the last question for you, but I lied. This is
I've got plenty of time, so whatever you want to ask.
well, I want to so the last thing that I really do want to hear from you is in the goal of this podcast is to talk to people who are actively either actively working to help the sport grow. My goal is to see the sport grow at a local level. So talk to people who are looking and actively working on making the sport grow, or people that have been pivotal in BMX. But anyway, based on our conversations and the things that we've talked about, who would you recommend? Who would be a good person for me to talk to and interview for the show?
Oh, Tyler Brown.
Tyler Brown. Okay.
Yeah. He man, he really really puts an awful lot into it. And people, well, yeah, he's just running a track. It's a little more than that. He's wrangled in a good amount of people in his circle to be able to do all different types of aspects of what it takes to like keep the track running, or things like, I don't know, like cement for the turns or asphalt for the turns, or what it takes to build a new gate, or to come out there. Like, I mean, I don't know what it's like right now, but it's raining here, and I'm in North San Diego right now, and it's raining out. So you've got all of that, but then also the way you treat all of your locals at your local races. you know, those families come in and they drop that money for that for your membership fee, and they come in, they're paying money to you know, just, you know, to race or to practice, and they're dropping money into those bikes and into that helmet and those uniforms and all that kind of stuff. And you know, they obviously want to, you know, when you're at a local race, that is community. And you know, you do wind up making friends and acquaintances, and you're all kind of on this little journey. And it's really really important, you know, for everybody to be communicating. And the cool thing about that, especially for the parents and for the kids as well, is not everybody's on their phone, you know, unless you're taking pictures, or maybe or
Yeah.
you're really not interested and you're just there because you're there. But for the most part, you know, you got people around you to talk to. And you can meet people from all different types of financial backgrounds, career backgrounds, different ethnicities. I mean, that's something that I actually have always found very, very, very interesting, and I got it from my dad. Is I'm a very multicultural person, so I like talking to people of other cultures and learning about that kind of stuff. You got all of this in BMX. It's a
Yeah.
global sport. And it was multicultural when I was a kid.
That's
And
cool.
I remember like some of my first black friends and my first Asian friends, my first Mexican friends, and my first Middle Eastern friends were from BMX racing. And also further on in life, you never know how they could come back into your life with you never know. I don't know. You could wind up, I don't know, getting married or being related or some sort of business, or you know, there's all kinds of ways that you could be connected throughout different times in your life, just from the people that you met when you first started BMX.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, some of those connections that I created back when, back in the late 90s are people that I still talk to now and still see. And it's really cool, the dynamic that it creates and some of the lifelong friendships and relationships that it creates. And um, yeah, it's a sport that I definitely appreciate.
I mean, when I go to the Hall of Fame, Cash Matthews, who's usually the MC, has said this at least twice, where he said, you know, it's not like as if little leaguers are having these Hall of Fame events for Little League, or a bunch of little leaguers, you know, that were playing together when they were, you know, I don't know how old Little League baseball players are. I'm guessing like 12 or something like that. You know, it's not like they're all getting together and having these reunion events and big reunion baseball games and as much. I think it's more like a pro league thing. But that being said, that's what makes this sport really unique. Plus, we got really cool bikes,
That's true.
no matter what era.
It is true. Yeah. And it's something that you constantly come back to is that, I mean, some of the historical, the bikes, um, the equipment, and being able to look at those things, being able to find those things, and whether it's a secondhand store at a garage sale or being able to find something in somebody's collection is really cool as well.
Absolutely, you know, I don't do the collecting thing, but yeah, I don't have hardly any of the stuff. I actually like being connected more to the people, but that doesn't mean I don't like the stuff. It just, well, just means I got bills, and I can't afford to have a bunch of this expensive old stuff. And I mean, I think like to make a replica of the bike that I won that race on in 1981, it'd probably be about $5,000.
Wow.
You know, I got a 16-year-old daughter. I got other things to pay for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Junior prom's coming. I got to get her a dress. Yeah, I'll skip on the old on the. But I got to tell you though, you go to those collectors events too, and it's really amazing what they do with the bikes from the 70s, early 70s, mid 70s, late 70s, 80s, 90s. It's just amazing.
It is. Yeah. being able to walk through some of those shows and being able to look at the bikes and yeah, it's definitely fun to see some of the bikes that have not been restored and are still in fantastic quality, and then some of the bikes that have been fully restored. And I think both those bikes are fun to look at.
Yeah, my friend Evan Johnson reached out to me. We're not related, but his dad was Steve Johnson, and his parents were John and Doris Johnson, and they were Torker, which was a iconic brand that started in around '76, and went all the way through to the initially through the '76 to '85, I think it was, and then they came back a couple of years later. Um,
And they're
but
back now.
he just reached out to me and said, "Hey, um, the brand is starting again, and they've already got like a prototype, and they've already got some shirts made, and they got a prototype chromoly frame and with new school geometry. So
It's cool.
I actually
I think
on
they'll
my
have
Facebook
bikes
I
at Dirty
made
Fest.
yeah, what's that?
I think they'll have bikes at Dirty Fest.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy how these brands, how they come back. I actually made a list on Facebook about 6 months ago of all of the brands that are over 30 years old that are still involved in BMX, and there's quite a few.
That's
Even
cool.
if they're selling in small numbers and not gigantic numbers, but we've still got GT and Redline, and then you've got like these like a really true race brand like Supercross that has been around. Man, I think Supercross officially started in '89, but Bill Ryan was very much involved in BMX when he was a young teenager. Already working with brands. I think he was working with SE in '82 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's a bunch of the brands that are, I mean, you've got Mongoose, and it's really cool to see some of those old school brands that have either come back or have stayed in business, even in a smaller way. But yeah, I definitely have appreciation for that.
yeah, I mean, and also there are these guys that are still, doing um people that are still involved in their brand to a certain degree too, or actually still making product as well. I mean, I just saw Gary Turner of GT Bicycles a couple days ago. I see Sal Correa, who has basically been like a welder fabricator for probably about 50 different BMX racing companies since the '70s.
Okay.
John Severin, who as well has been welding and fabricating for a bunch of different companies since pretty much the inception of BMX. So it's amazing these people are still involved.
That's cool.
Yeah, because really, I mean, your life is a precious thing, and you're investing it in something that's really cool and touches a lot of people's lives, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, man. Johnny, this has been so much fun. Thank you. Thank you for talking, sharing, being able to provide stories and insights, and being able to kind of walk down some memory lane of BMX stuff, and be able to talk about be able to share about your dad and what he did for the sport. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just kind of here to help, really. I know it sounds like a very kind of overly simplified, sweeping way of saying it, but I am just kind of here to help, and and I never know exactly what that means or what it's going to turn out like, but whether it's sharing some information or some encouragement or some foresight or whatever, I just like to be able to help out, and that's really about it. It's a whatever God wants me to do, I usually figure it out.
That's cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me and having a conversation. And I look forward to actually getting to meet in person. Assuming you'll probably be at Dirty Fest this year again.
Yeah, as far as I understand, I am supposed to be.
Oh.
It'll be a lot of fun. That was a really fun event last year, and I can't wait for it to happen. It's not too far away from me. Where are you located?
Right now, I'm in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm in the process of moving to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and home has been Northwest Washington since I was born. And we're hanging out at a friend's house right now. We're in the process of buying a house, and just beginning of January, I got everything moved out to Tulsa. So we're it's slowly transitioning out there, but we'll be down at Dirty Fest, and we'll be taking about starting in March. I guess we'll take a couple of months on a road trip and stop at Dirty Fest and slowly make our way out to Tulsa around May.
Wow. And it's funny because I don't really travel out that way much. I went to Rockford, Illinois for um a huge get together in 2005. And then over this last year and a half, I went to Tulsa twice for the USA BMX Hall of Fame for 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, 2022. I went there for that. And then I wound up going back about 6 months ago, maybe a little more than that, for the Oklahoma State BMX Hall of Fame.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
yeah, so one of my buddies that rode for Diamondback, John Copeland, who's originally from Broken Arrow,
Okay.
Oklahoma.
Didn't know
He's
that.
lived out here in Southern California for 30 years. He lives in upper northeast Long Beach. Um, he just said, "Hey, they're inducting me into this Oklahoma State Hall of Fame, and you want to go?" And so I actually went and actually kind of helped him write his speech a little bit. And
Right on.
he says, "You remember way more about my BMX racing career than I do." So. So I got to go out to Tulsa twice, and I actually like Tulsa. I think it's actually pretty cool. It's from being in Southern California, it's weird. It's like Southern California kind of on a rainy day, where not necessarily meaning there's rain in Tulsa, but meaning there's a lot less people on the road.
Yeah. A whole lot less.
But I actually like Tulsa. I think it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be perfect for our family. The kids are really excited, and I'm really looking forward to some of the opportunities and things to do. And then, like I said, we'll be down in LA. We'll be there for Dirty Fest, but I think the couple of weeks leading up to Dirty Fest, we'll be down in the San Diego area.
Yeah.
So I'll get a hold of you because I'd like to meet up with a couple of people and go and take the kids to the tracks down there and be able to go. And we're not sure exactly where we're staying at yet, but anyway, once I know, I'll reach out and we'll have to try to connect.
Yeah, I'm really, really glad to be here. Thank you very much for reaching out to me. And if there's any other stuff that you need to, if there's any way I might be able to, help or guide or shed some light on some stuff, just please reach out anytime.
Sounds good. Cool. Thank you so much. Have an incredible day, and we'll talk soon.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll see you later.
Okay. Bye, Johnny.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.